Again, Kayla McKinney, Floyd County. And Kayla has been to 4 days of training, I believe. After only 2 days of training, she picked up the ball and started to run with it even before the Inquiry Fellows were identified. And she wrote a blog about it. Her blog caught the attention of professors at UK, Kathy Swan namely, and Kathy encouraged her to publish her blog on the C3, the national C3 network, which she did, and it's been widely, that should come through, widely read, and hopefully she'll be doing much more training on this in the future.
Do you know? Technology issues. Okay, so I went to the training back in, this was in the spring, and I have seniors and freshmen. I teach high school English, and in the spring, seniors are coming down with senioritis, and they're ready for school to be out, and they're not wanting to be there. And so when I went to the training, as she was going through, one thing I always struggle with is how do I make this relevant? Because not all of my kids are going to go to college. Not all of them care about, you know, college English. And one thing I love about the IDM is it's built into it, the relevance. It's built into the plan and how you have to think about it. And so as the training was going, I started thinking about this unit, why am I here? And I went back to school, I did the unit with my kids, and it was all about why do we have to have English for 4 years? Because that's always the question. I already know how to speak English. Why am I in here? So it kind of focused on that, how it affects them. We're in a poverty. You know, over 70% of our school is free and reduced lunch. So I did a little article on that. And it brought in a lot of different curriculum too. Like with the poverty, we used an article, and it was very social studies. And so we were able to pull in some different stuff. And I think it brought my kids back on track, but also it brought me back a little bit because we get so stuck in what we're doing, and I'm doing it this way, and nobody's listening to me anyway, and I'm just going to keep going. And so it kind of made me stop and made me change. And from there, I actually emailed Kathy Swan, was like, this was just an awesome training, you know, it revived me basically, and they asked me to write a blog, and that's on c3teachers.org. So this is a unit that I have for my seniors. They read Lord of the Flies, and Lord of the Flies, it's a good book. You should read it. It's pretty good. But Lord of the Flies is this book. These kids get stranded on an island, and they basically have no adults with them. And so they have to decide. And I started thinking about, in English language arts, as far as IDM, you have to think about, well, really for anything, why am I teaching them what I'm teaching them? What's the purpose? Yeah, this is on their curriculum, sure. But why am I teaching it? What do I want them to get out of this? And I think that's what I really love about the IDM. It really makes you think about that. It's not going to cooperate with me, but that's okay. That's on my website. It has like all of my compelling questions and everything. So I started thinking about the Lord of the Flies, and I thought about it in that instance. What exactly are they supposed to get out of it? And that led me to these questions, which strangely enough ended up being the themes of the book, so it just worked in so perfectly with it. And one thing I love about the unit is, with our election coming up and with seniors, almost all of my kids are going to be voting. And so one thing that they do with the unit is they look at what are the admirable qualities of a leader. It's something I would have never thought about for the unit without IDM, but you really have to think about where our foundation's coming from. So they look at the presidential candidates. My kids are actually working on that now, and they present on both candidates in an unbiased form, and then at the end they form an opinion on what they think. So I thought it was just a good outlet to think of. The IDM, you come up with one compelling question. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. That's the tough part, because you really have to make it so general, and we're so used to like being so specific, but you have to back it up. And it really engages the kids because they get involved with it. They care where their allowance is going to be cut, or they care about who's going to be the leader of our country, you know, especially my ones that are going to be voting. And even one of the questions I did with them, what constitutes right and what constitutes wrong? And at first, you know, they didn't really know what to think about that question when I asked them, what do you think, where does this come from? Our idea of what's right. And we looked at moral dilemmas. We looked at the Heinz dilemma, which is a very famous dilemma. And they talked about their ideas on it. They got to argue with each other. My kids are in groups, and they had a good time with it, But at the same time, they learned about the Lord of the Flies and they connected it back to the reading. And one thing about language arts, I think with IDM is you have to read the book first. That was my first question. How am I supposed to do this if they've never read the book? So we read the book first, then we go back to this. So I think it's a real game changer for the classroom. But also, I think with what you were saying, I think it would go perfectly with that, because this kind of helps you think about how can I relate it, or what's the big question here, and that kind of leads into how it can relate to other subject areas. So my website's McKinney4.weebly.com if anybody wants that. The lesson's on there, and it never gets deleted. And also I have the why am I here too I can send out to people, and I think it's on C3 maybe. Questions? Okay, thank you.